This doesn't happen too often. I wish it did more often, but it's just so wonderful when a student can introduce her dad, who will be the speaker of the morning. So Carter Harrison, introduce your dad. Okay.
Good morning. I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Frank Harrison III. He is the chairman and CEO of the Coca-Cola Bottling Company Consolidated. He is the fourth-generation family leader of what has become the nation's largest independent Coca-Cola bottler. He is focused on creating a culture of servant leaders whose values and actions honor God. In 2008, Frank and his son James co-founded with Open Eyes, a global missions organization that mobilizes leaders to serve those in need, to share the gospel, and to disciple believers. Frank lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. He has many hobbies and interests that he enjoys and does very well, but I think what he's best at is being my dad. First, we will see a short film that will give you a better understanding of With Open Eyes.
My name is Daniel Shirim Kishinda. I'm a mobile messenger.
I am Pastor Rodas Bakari. I am one of the mobile messenger.
My name is Reverend Susten Amin Lati. I'm a mobile messenger.
I'm from Maasai community, so I'm a Maasai and I love my people. I want them to know God in their hearts and accept Jesus as their personal savior.
This church is a newly branded. When I was given a motorbike, it has really helped me to reach this place, whereby I could not manage to come on my own on foot or on bicycle.
We had planted over 50 churches, and we have now recruited 4 mobile messengers. After training them, we train the local mobile messengers out there in the churches where we planted, so that they can preach a gospel in effective ways.
I have now raised up leaders who are training that will be in charge in this church, because my work is to continue to reach the people.
I've been a pastor for the last more than 22 years or maybe more, and starting a church is not an easy thing.
Church, open your eyes. Let's open our eyes and see what's happening. The body of Christ is suffering.
Needing to go and shine our light in the darkness where people then don't know about Jesus.
Maybe the church in America can do things that we cannot be able to do. When we combine our forces together, we can do something big for the glory of God.
What we do as a Christians, you see, we need to unite ourselves, because this is already a battle. It's a spiritual battle. So we need to unite and fight this battle together to evangelize our people, to know the gospel.
My hope is to spread the love of Christ, give people hope, give people a future, and just let them know we're in this with them. It's one thing to listen and hear it. It wasn't going to get off my heart and my conscience until I decided to go do something about it.
Well, good morning, Westmont. Great to be here this morning. I got about 15 minutes to cover a lot of ground. We're going to talk about life, business, and this wonderful organization called With Open Eyes. Saw a lot of motorcycles on there. I love motorcycles. James loved motorcycles. I had the privilege just a few months ago of being over in way out back Kenya. I don't even remember where we were, but we had 5 or 6 pastors with us. They all told me they could ride bikes before we left, and we were there in Nairobi getting ready to head out. And one thing you'd never want to do, I said I would never do it, but I did it and had a ball actually doing it. And that is driving through the traffic in Nairobi on, you don't want to do it in a car, much less a motorcycle. But we were getting ready to start, and this one fella couldn't do the clutch. I mean, the thing was breaking down. I said, oh, my word. Kind of got mad at him, but we put him in a van, and it ended up being a good thing because we had a doctor in the van. And I wish you'd been with me, but these 5 or 6 pastors, they really learned how to wreck good. I was teaching, pull your leg out and fall on the bike. But we had an incredible time. But what we saw time and time again was this, and this is what this ministry is all about. Just in the middle of nowhere, you pass a cornfield, go around it, and you look up, and you would spot the motorcycle, the mobile messenger's motorcycle. Come around a cornfield, and there would be a church, 4 sticks and a tarp. 25, 30 people under there just worshiping, praising God. And 3 to 6 months earlier, nobody in that village they'd never seen a Bible. And the mobile messenger went in, just one person at a time, one family at a time. And I'm always amazed by those statistics. I think I have these right. They're like 3,800 people groups around the world that have never heard the name of Jesus. I think 1.5 billion people. So what this ministry really does, they just major in reaching the far out, unreached people of the world. Their purpose, we say, is to accelerate the gospel, doing something as simple, really, as coming alongside local pastors and giving them a motorcycle. Take a country like Sudan, where James was called to back in 2005, middle of a civil war there. Everybody's walking. The pastors are walking. And on a good day, you can cover 10 miles walking and go to village. But with a motorcycle, all of a sudden you can cover half the village, and just dramatically accelerates what they're able to do. Last year, just our 3rd year of this new ministry, I think 7,642 people came to Christ. We planted 96 churches with 73 of these mobile messengers. So that's real quickly the purpose of this ministry. I'll talk more about it in a minute, but I want to kind of begin there with just the old purpose topic with you all. I'm going to ask you the purpose question, like why are you here? Why are you here on earth? You've probably been asked that question before. I hadn't until not too long ago. I did something I do not like to do, business magazine interview. Agreed to do this one. And I'm dead serious. The first 2 questions out of this lady's mouth were, Mr. Harrison, what is your purpose in life? And what is the legacy that you want to leave at Coke Consolidated? And I just said, have you ever asked another business executive that question before? And she said, no, never have. And I said, well, why did you ask me? And she said, well, we did a little research on you. Thought you'd give us a good answer. So I sort of struggled through that one. That was on a Friday. Monday, we had a big project going on at Coke Consolidated. We had the 3 big consultants in, McKinsey, Booz, and Bain. We were going to interview them for a project. McKinsey people were in there first. They started telling me all about how great they were and their stuff. And I stopped them early on. I said, listen, I want to just get to know you all a little better. I'd like to ask you a question, And seriously, I said, Harvard, Yale, MIT, really bright people. What is your purpose in life? And I won't take you through it all, but the 3 groups, probably 15 people, not one of them, even came close. They could. Actually, we hired the Booze people. This one guy, their head guy, bright, just stammered, Frank, I just want to do good in life, I don't know. That's purpose. And where am I? I'm thinking about purpose and legacy. I want you to think a minute about legacy. You know, when we lost James a little over a year ago, I began to understand deeper what that meant. You know, you die and you leave things to people, inheritance, I always had that, you know, but legacy, you know, that's like what you leave in people, what goes on forever. What do people say about you after you're dead? You know, if you died tomorrow, you'd leave a legacy. If I died at 27 like James did, you know, I mean, maybe they'd say he was a decent guy. That was about it. It's incredible what James was able to do the last 5 years of his life. He was, I think he, among other things, he really struggled there at the end of his life trying to figure out what I just mentioned to you. What is his purpose? His mother always said that she thought he was really called to missions. James didn't really know. I mean, he really wanted to be in our business for some reason. He was fifth generation. The Coke business started in 1900, our Coca-Cola business. But James also was full speed ahead. You know, I don't want you to think for a minute he was a little choir boy, because he struggled with alcohol, struggled with wrong relationships. But those last 5 years of his life, man, he was all over the world just trying to figure it out and get it right. But I'll tell you, as a businessman, this whole purpose legacy thing has been on my mind. And 10 years ago, I would just tell you some quick things behind our business, and that's this. 10 years ago, I began to understand something that I hadn't understood before, and that is, Frank, someday you're going to be held accountable before the Lord for this business, this company, in terms of the impact and influence for Christ. I understood personal accountability for my life. I understood accountability before shareholders for the business, but like accountability before God for the impact and influence the company was having, that was different. Didn't really know what to do with that. Just started praying about it, and I would tell you maybe a quick story in 5 minutes that things just began to happen. One of the first things that happened, I ran into a friend of mine that said to me, Frank, I put a chaplain in my manufacturing plant. It was a good thing. That's all he said. I remember thinking so clearly, man, we've been around 100 plus years, never done that. Got to be illegal, you know, just let it go, public company. Won't take you through all the stories, but one after another, I kept running into people that had chaplains. The last one, because it's coming up here in another month, was at the Coke 600. They had that driver's meeting. Right after the driver's meeting, they have a chapel service, which is a good thing for those guys to do, considering what they get ready to do. Most of the teams stay, and most of them had chaplains. So I go back to work the next week and say, hey, we need to look into this chaplains thing. And again, to make a long story short, we did a test in our Nashville, Tennessee plant. We put 2 chaplains in, and all I can say is after 7 to 9 months, I got a call from the HR people, and they said, Frank, if you pull these chaplains, man, we're going to have a revolt on our hands. It's incredible what's happening. The marriages that are being restored, kids gotten out of jail, families getting pulled back together. And also during that little test period, we had an employee die. He came to Christ through the chaplain. His family didn't have a church, and the family said, could we have the funeral at the Coke plant? I didn't know anything about it, but they had the funeral back on the loading docks, and like 13 people came to Christ. So from there, we said, wow, this chaplain thing is real. We got to expand that, and today we probably have 50 chaplains throughout our Coke locations throughout the Southeast. From there, though, things just began to happen. We said we need to get our employees, we need to teach our employees how to serve. We need to get them much more involved in things in people's lives. And so we started what we call our stewardship programs. And now our folks are involved in ministry really around the world, throughout the Southeast. We do prison ministry. Our plant in Roanoke, Virginia basically takes care of the homeless, abused children, elderly, just lots of different things. From there, we said, what about giving? You know, what should we be giving to organizations that are having an eternal impact on those that they're ministering to? Just say Christian organizations, company, public or private. We gave to all kinds of organizations throughout our franchise area, but you don't give to a church, you know, as a company, public. You give to one church, you got to give to another church. You might have to give to the temple, the synagogue. You just don't do that. And but we woke up a number of years ago and said, now, wait a minute, who owns it all? Whose money is it? Who am I, the guy in charge here? Who am I going to be held accountable for it someday? So we started giving. You know, it's one of the most exciting things I do throughout our year, just to be able to give and support wonderful organizations all over the world. I'll tell you a quick side story. 2010, this 2 years ago, still the best year in the history of our company. End of that year, as we were going in 2010, I didn't really feel like we had our giving right, and it's something that you really need to think and pray about as a company. What should it be? X percent of what? Operating income, pre-tax, after, what should it be? And we were sort of working through that. But as we came to the end of the year there, budgeting for 2010, we just said, hey, let's double it. I think the Lord will be good with that. Let's just, after about 10 years of growing it, let's just double it. And we're a public company, so you can see our records. 2010 had a good year last year, 2011, but 2010 was the best year ever in the history of the company. Economy's been a little tough out there, so the prior 3 or 4 years have been flat on the operating income line. 2010 is up 28%. Now, did that have anything to do with giving? Surely not, but maybe it did. I think it probably did. From there, though, back to the purpose thing. Oh, we got a little time. Back to the purpose thing. Our company has a purpose, It's 6,000 employees and their families. We have a purpose. What is it? Well, I'll tell you ours. It's to honor God in all we do, to serve others, to pursue excellence, and to grow profitably. To honor God in all you do, that brings up the God question in a public company. What's going on here? We think it's the most important question in life. You need to answer it. And it's all about our values and how we do business. And really, when we make key decisions, we ask, is God good with this? What is this? And it sounds simple, but I'll tell you a little story here that shows you how it can get complicated. A couple of months ago, a fellow that's a friend of yours, Danny, Norman George, came to me and said, we got a new energy drink coming out, and we got a couple of guys we want to sponsor it. A couple of NASCAR guys, and y'all all would know this guy, so I'm not going to mention his name because I can just tell there's a lot of serious professional wrestling fans in this audience, but well-known professional wrestler. And I thought, okay, energy drink, wrestling and NASCAR, I get it. But then my son-in-law heard about, somehow I mentioned it to him. He said, I used to love this guy. He said, he had that tomahawk chop or something, he said. But he said, Frank, have you read about him lately? So he sent me this article. Everything you could imagine bad was in this article. He 18 wives and beat up everybody, owed everybody in town, and a couple of things I can't mention here this morning that were in the article. And I'm saying, wow, okay, to honoring God, now that's not, hey, there's a problem here. We should probably just get rid of this guy. But when the complications here, when you really start thinking about it, and you go from what would God do to what would Jesus do, and you start thinking about the woman at the well and all that, I just said, oh, no, man, I don't want it. No, Lord, no, I don't have to deal with this. But eventually I invited this guy to come have lunch. Now, I used to wrestle in college 100 years ago, but, we didn't have any fun there. But he came back to my little conference room, and we had a meal together. First 30 minutes, he actually shut me down right up front. He said, Frank, I am so famous. They write all this stuff about me. You can't believe any of that junk. It's not, I just don't believe it. And we found out later, really, all of it was true. But for about 30 minutes, I had to listen to what an incredible, great guy he was and wonderful. At some point, I just stopped him, and I said, so-and-so, I got to tell you something. God, there is a God that loves you so much. He sent his son Jesus to die on a cross for your sin. Whatever you've done, all this crazy stuff, God will wash you and cleanse you. Your past can be totally erased and done away with. You don't have to keep messing up families, and went on with him a little bit. And at some point, next week I was going to prison ministry there, and I invited him to prison. He said, I'll go with you, because I knew he'd really hear the gospel there. He said, I'll go with you. They love me in prison, And I said, well, I know they do, and they did love him. And that's a whole nother story, but honor God in all we do. To serve others. Man, if you don't get anything else this morning, this serving piece is so powerful. We're trying to teach our people, trying to teach me mostly, how to be a servant. There's so much power. There's so much strength. There's so much you can do in business and life if you learn to be a servant. And that's the idea of putting the needs of others before your own, serving the people you're right here with, serving our customers, serving. And it's so much more than just great products and great packaging and strategies. And there's a little convenience store between Charlotte and our farm in a little town called Waxhaw. I've been in there several times over the last several years. He's selling way, 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 way too much of the blue stuff. And I thought this was a Christian school, but I saw some blue stuff in that cafeteria, but that's a whole nother subject. But this little convenience store was selling way too much of the blue stuff. I've been in and out of there over the years, no help. Head of sales lives in Waxhaw. He's been working on that place, nothing. I dropped in there with my son-in-law again. I tell you, after you lose your son, son-in-law, they become, Jay was always good and close, but man, he's my son now, 2 days ago, I got to tell you this, just came to mind. we buried James at a farm there in Charlotte, which was just a last-minute idea, but it's so cool. I was sitting down there talking to him 2 days ago before we came out here, and I don't really ever do that, but I was boo-hooing a little bit, you know, and Jay called me right out of the blue, and he just was, you know, working with me there a little bit, and I just, when I hung up, I was good, and I just thought, Lord, isn't that nice of you to have my son-in-law call me right here, right now. But back to serving others, let me tell you one other thing, too, about serving, because it's so important. Speaking of James, when I got the word year plus ago about James, shot over there to Nairobi, and I would tell you this, on that way over, I've never had chest pains, you know, but man, I had to stand up on that airplane and stretch a little bit, I know just because of the stress. 3 great women met me over there that worked for Coca-Cola, basically run Coca-Cola Kenya, took me to a little hotel conference room, and I just, to some interesting reason, the first 2 things that came to my mind was one that sounds odd, but the Harrison name would not go forward. We have 3 daughters and a son. Those of you who just have daughters, you know, you're over that. But I just realized that, and then I thought, wow, James will never work in the Coke business. And then real quickly I realized, man, Frank, that is so silly. I mean, Coke, name. What matters here is James knew Jesus. What matters here is he's got a legacy. That's what matters. That's what's important. But back to these 3 women. One of these women talking about serving. They didn't know me. They knew of me. They didn't know me. When they heard James died, one of these women went right to his side. Whew. She was there with James. Took me 2 days to get there, but she was there at his side through the autopsy, through whatever they do at a funeral home. They were concerned something might happen, you know, to him. She didn't leave his side, you know, and I didn't know that till later. But I tell you, I would do anything in the world for this Kenyan woman and her family. When we truly, truly start to serve, and it's incredible. I know I'm telling so many stories. I lost you. I just thought about that convenience store story. Can I come back? I left y'all. I'm sorry. But I went in there and got to know that guy with Jay, my son-in-law. And he had a South Korean guy, and his daughter couldn't get in the country. And I really started listening and showing compassion about the daughter. And how can I help get the daughter in? And Jan called me and said, "Are you going to church?" And I said, "Yeah, we're going to church tonight." He said, "Do you go to church?" He hadn't been to church in years. Used to be a choir leader at a big church in South Korea. So I invited him to church. But back to the serving. I didn't even realize I was serving him. I come back through a month later with the president of our company. I said, "I want you to meet this old tough guy from South Korea." We pull into the parking lot. Off to the left, stacked up a mile high, was Pepsi equipment everywhere. Just jumped up, stacked up. We go inside, and it looks like a Coca-Cola museum in there. Coke equipment everywhere, banners. And I didn't even have to ask the guy. I knew. I'd finally quit selling and started serving. So much power there. You can't lead unless you're a servant leader. Jesus set the total model there. And growing in excellence and growing profitably. Don't have time to get into all that, but we are about growth. We're going to grow. It is a mandate. It is a must. We're going to honor God, but we're going to grow this business of His. But back to you all now, purpose and legacy here in a minute or two I got left. What is your purpose? You know, if you die tomorrow, you are going to leave a legacy. I want to encourage you to get aggressive for Jesus. James was very, very aggressive. When we came back from Nairobi with those pastors, and then they had 3 or 4 days of riding, so they were starting to get it. And we came back into Nairobi, and our leader, this Kenyan guy named Evan, he said, "Man, we'll be stacked up in this traffic for hours. Just follow me." So we started moving through that traffic. I mean, sidewalks, cutting in, cutting through, all that stuff you see people do when you're driving in crazy places like that you thought you would never do. Cutting through, shooting through, busting through chickens, just everything. And I mean, having more fun too. But we were being very, very aggressive, you know, in our driving. There are only so many opportunities you're going to get in life to really get it done for Jesus, you know. Carter's going to come up and challenge you here in a minute about an opportunity with open eyes. But listen, if you get those opportunities and that door is open, you need to shoot through it. You need to be aggressive. God will put somebody else through that door if not. John 12:24, I'll leave you with this verse. Jesus talking, he says, "Most assuredly I say unto you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much grain." I would just encourage you this morning, you got to die to yourself completely. You got to get that, you got to get in the ground. You got to get the foundation strong. And then you got to get out there and be aggressive for Christ and produce much grain. That's what he wants, you know. And that's my closing thought here this morning. Thank you all for listening. And Carter, though, we want to call you up and challenge this group. Thank you. About forgot.
Your summer plans. Some of you in here are planners. You knew what you were doing this summer last summer. But others of you, like myself, get to this point in the semester, and that's when you realize that it's time to make some summer plans. I have a challenge, an opportunity for any of you that might fall into that last-minute summer plan category, an opportunity that I think could change your life. With Open Eyes, we'll provide 4 Westmont students with the chance to see firsthand how God is using our mobile messengers to spread the gospel in remote parts of the world. You will travel from the U.S. to the country of Kenya. From there, you will arrive in the village of Namunga, near the Kenya and Tanzania border, to spend 4 weeks serving alongside a team of 8 mobile messengers. These men have changed my life, and I guarantee you that they will change yours. You might travel with them in an old Jeep or ride on the back of a motorcycle as they go from village to village, meeting the emotional, physical, and spiritual needs of the people, much like Jesus did with his disciples 2,000 years ago. The vision for this adventure is that you'd be able to record it. You could bring it back to your friends, to your family, to Westmont. I know that all of you in here use Twitter, Facebook, your cameras, your blogs. I really hope that you can use these tools to learn how to build a bridge so that we can all share in the internal work being done. Imagine going from a summer of not really having a plan to returning knowing that you may have led someone to faith in Jesus. You'll help a child learn to read, write, or just put a smile on their face. You'd be able to pray over those who are hurting and just in desperate need of love. You could participate in a worship service in a brand new church planted by a mobile messenger. You could assist in actually building the church. You'll definitely gain a much better understanding of what it means to be an American Christian and just get a new perspective. I think we can all agree that a fresh perspective comes when we're willing to get uncomfortable and when we have the faith to remove ourselves from our everyday, very comfortable lifestyle. There was no one I knew more willing to remove himself or to take on a challenge than my brother James. James would do anything that came his way, whether it was being in the middle of a civil war in the Sudan, to guiding bear hunts, to skydiving, to doing the world's largest bungee jump, to commercial fishing in Alaska, to flying airplanes. There was no doubt that my brother lived his life with a reckless abandon. He had a heart that was willing to share love fearlessly, and although his life was short, it was extremely full because he was so willing to give himself to others. I believe that you can experience that same fullness of life alongside the mobile messengers. Whether it's Pastor Simon, Sostin, Daniel, or Morris, these men just have a contagious joy that is simply indescribable, and I know your time there would be extremely blessed. If you have that hunger to give, to experience, to share the love of Jesus, I would say you have an opportunity for an incredible summer ahead. Thank you so much for all of your time, and if you have any questions about possibly going on a trip to Kenya this summer, or maybe you would consider being an intern at the With Open Eyes headquartered office in Charlotte, or just want to find out about lots of ways that you can get involved with the organization, we'll be up at the DC and look forward to seeing you there. Thanks.